Meeting information button.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Casey Matthews, at such short notice. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so glad to get to talk to you. First question: who is Casey Matthews?
Well, I am a happily married husband. My wife and I recently moved to Colorado. It's almost been a year now. It's hard to believe. And recently came from Florida, and it's the weather is quite a bit different here, so that's some getting used to from Florida. But um, I am just been in the technology field now for about 25 years, and love to help people out with all kinds of tech stuff.
Very good. And what parts of Florida were you living in, by the way?
Well, I actually grew up in Daytona Beach, kind of a little touristy town right on the coast of Florida. And then my wife and I eventually moved to Orlando, otherwise known as Mickey Town, right near Disney. So we were there for a good, 18, 19 years or so before we eventually moved to Colorado Springs.
Right. Very good. Okay. And by the way, were you born blind? Because I was. I was born with glaucoma, by the way. What about you?
Yeah, so I actually also was born with glaucoma. I was diagnosed with it about 2 weeks after I was born. And I actually did have some vision, what I say is just enough to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was born 3 months early. So that kind of started things off. Got too much oxygen, and that started the vision loss. And then I got glaucoma right after that. So that's kind of what started my vision loss. And I had about 2200 acuity just in one eye, so enough to get around okay. Um, and I eventually started getting headaches, and because I was reading things I shouldn't have been. And eventually I lost the vision that I had in one eye after 12 operations. Lost it when I was about 13. So
Mm.
that's kind of how my blindness and low vision all kind of came together.
Right. And as I tell my guests from around the world, I can't really understand what it must be like to lose your vision, because I was, born with glaucoma. So
Right.
that's a very, very complex concept for me to understand. But the fact is, now you're blind, so that's life, as I
Hmm.
say.
Yep.
And I'm 30 years old. And my academic background is in the field of international studies, and I got into podcasting, by the way, because I feel that there are not enough strong podcasts in the blindness community where people can just come up, basically just call me, leave a voicemail, and then we just record. I think that, in my opinion, there are not enough strong podcasters who are open to having guests and
Mm.
open to helping you share your story. So I'm really determined
Oh,
to do that. Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Okay. So, and as far as the technology things that you do you want to talk more, going into more about your connection with Ocean Waves Radio and the various technology projects that you've worked on in your life? Because Ocean Waves Radio has told me that you've done a lot of interesting things in technology. I just don't know what they are. So.
Yeah, so I've been working with Ocean Waves Radio just to help out with the odds and end technical issue that comes up from time to time.
Oh
We all
yeah.
we all know technology can be
Hmm.
your friend while it's working well, and can be your mortal enemy when it's not. So that's kind of where I come in, and I've been working with Alicia there for quite a while. And as I said, I've been in the technology I guess field for about 25 years. I've been working with a lot of different organizations, and then after seeing a lot of the issues that people come up with technology that I wasn't necessarily able to solve for one reason or another with the organizations that I was working with, I decided, I think I can do something about this, and I have now been in business now for myself for about 2 years, and it's hard to believe it's been 2 years. And a lot of people don't realize. I started out not knowing anything about technology as far as what it could do for people. um, when I was just almost out of high school, they told me they were going to get me a computer, and I just kind of laughed. I said, "Well, what am I going to do with a computer?" I didn't know they could talk. I didn't know they had braille. So they got me a computer, and I heard it talk for the first time, and I was like, "Well, this is a game changer. This means I can actually use the thing. This means I can get on the internet and do all kinds of stuff." This was before Google, before we had great search engines. So it was kind of one of those, you really got to be kind of know what you're doing. There's no search engine that's going to kind of bail you out back then. So it was quite a blast. I didn't have a computer at the time at home, so I took the tapes, and back then it was cassettes. So for people that know what cassettes are, um,
I do because I am 30, but I think anyone younger than 30 will not know
yeah,
that word cassette.
right, yeah, so that's how the manuals were, and I think I had about 20 or so cassettes that just these little magnetic tapes that went through and told you about JAWS, told you about DOS, and another thing that people probably don't know. Um, all command line text based. This was before Windows, so that's kind of how I got started. And then eventually I went to Windows, and that was a whole different world. And um, one of the great things for me was when I realized, because I was paying bills by paper and hoping that the check got there, and I had all these little techniques for filling out the bill with check writing guides and all kinds of stuff. And when I realized, once the internet started to kind of take off, and I realized I could, pay my bills online, and instead of taking a whole afternoon to pay my bills, I could just fill out a form. That was a huge thing for me, and I kind of started to realize, if this stuff works so well for me, it can work, wonders for other people as well, as long as they, get the proper training and get the techniques down and learn the technology. So that's kind of how my journey and stuff, with technology started.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things that's really, and I'm noticing it, the longer that I'm a podcaster and the longer that I'm basically a broadcasting person, as a hobby, and I'm talking to more and more people around the industry from around the world, I'm noticing that it just, Casey, it just seems like the more technology we have, for some people, it's actually harder for them to get the access they need. And I don't know if you can understand what I mean and if you even agree with me at all, but I'm very frustrated as a 30-year-old that we have a lot of blind people who are not given the appropriate access that they need, when in fact
Yeah,
it was a lot. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, by the way?
I am 43 right now.
Okay. So for someone like you, at least 13 years older than me, uh, you were born in the upper 70s.
Yeah,
So, life is hard. My life is hard, but your life was a lot harder for a blind person than my life is, right? So,
yeah.
so basically, what
You
I'm
could say
asking
that.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, what have you found in working in the technology field? What have you found to be the truth of this? How do we get blind people to really be able to understand what technology means? What do you think?
Well, it's a really kind of a loaded question, and I am kind of going to answer that with a short story, because it's not always about learning skills and all that kind of thing. I had a customer a while back, and this was shortly after the whole COVID pandemic started, and she was doing physical therapy and was not able to continue physical therapy because the website was not usable. And she was to the point where she was thinking about giving up on her physical therapy. And so I came along and found a way to get into her website there that she was being forced to use. And she was eventually able to continue her physical therapy. And I don't know what would have happened to her if she wasn't able to continue her physical therapy. So sometimes assistive technology and information technology, sometimes they do have to work together And when they don't work together, it's not always about, we think about the core skills, learning the internet, learning Word, learning, Windows or iPhone or different things. But sometimes these issues have a real barrier, for people to get things that they need done.
Right, right. Now that person who needed to access the physical therapy website, was that a blind person who was working as a physical therapist, or was that a blind person who was, who was needing physical therapy?
Yeah, she was a blind person that needed physical therapy, and so
Hmm.
that's where she was stuck.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's very see. That's the type. That's an example of how technology can be a barrier to a blind person. It's a very very serious matter. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad that she was able to access that, that material, so that she was able to continue continue like making reservations and continue using that particular physical therapist, or
Yeah.
what exactly was the nature of the problem?
Well, in this case, she was required to get into the website and join a video meeting, similar to
Ah.
what we have with Zoom, but of course it wasn't Zoom. And so she had to fill out a form every time she joined her physical therapy session, fill out a form. The edit boxes there were not labeled. The continue button was, not actually a button. It was some sort of link somewhere. So there was a lot of little niggling issues that kind of piled up, and eventually I was able to help her get through that on a consistent basis. But this was just so that she could have a video conference with her physical therapist, so that she could continue that. And they would
Hmm.
not switch to a different platform at that point. So it was a really big issue at the time.
And that would be a big issue anytime, because
Yeah.
a lot of times I'm finding that my fellow blind people who are around my age or especially younger, a lot of blind people just give up when they can't access the things they need, and it's really, I mean, I know that you understand it, but
Mhm.
to the audience who doesn't understand it, it's really affecting blind people, and it's really really a barrier that, before I was born, I think the barrier then was society, and not having, the laws that we have today, but now we still have a barrier with society and technology. And so
Yeah.
there's still this, I mean, it really interests me that there's still this barrier that's hovering around. So
Well,
okay.
and to
Yes.
to add to that, on the plus side, when technology works, and this is another story that I kind of use all the time. There was a point where I was unemployed and filed for unemployment, and the website was perfect, and I was able to go through the website, fill it out, no problem. And I came from before the internet was really a big thing, so I
Right.
remember the days when you had to camp out, pack a lunch, go to the social security office, and just stay there the whole day, and do what you had to do, and then once you got to the person, then you had to get assistance, filling out the forms, and it was a big issue, and you had to get some assistance. So with the online form, I was about to able to do my form in probably about an hour and a half or so, and I was done. Didn't have to pack a lunch, didn't have to camp out, and it was done. So sometimes, depending on what it is, it can really be a huge game changer. I didn't have to get assistance. I didn't have to rely on transportation. So it goes both ways. It can go both ways.
Sure, 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 sure. Well, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, certain websites so certain things are easier. So, all right. So then, at some point, you did you open your own business? Did you open your own company? Why don't you walk us through like how all the steps that you needed to go through to get there, and tell us all about it.
Yeah, so back in 2019, September was when I started I opened up my online business and at webfriendlyhelp.com. And I hadn't done anything like that. So previous to that, I had done a ton of research, read a bunch of books. I'm kind of a research guy, and it's one of the services I also provide on, kind of on the side. But I just read, probably 5 or 6 books on the subject. Everything from LLCs to corporations to taxes to, and then there was all this stuff about websites and how to do your website. And so I kind of became sort of a self-taught expert on a lot of different things, and I wanted to know, you know, what I needed to know to get myself out of trouble if something happened. So I didn't want to, leave it to chance. So I read a lot before I even, started. And then I did a lot of online research and, eventually, it just came, time to start. You can spend a lifetime, researching, but at some point you have to just, try it and
Yeah.
change if you need to. But and I have started to realize, um, that in some respects, working for yourself, although it's not for everybody, it can be a great way to earn an income, and you're relying on yourself rather than someone else who may or may not have your best interests at heart, may or may not want to take the time to investigate alternative ways of doing things. So this can be an option for a lot of people. And I sort of realized that in the back of my mind, but after I started my own company and started figuring things out, it really kind of became, the light bulb kind of went off, and I kind of realized, this could be a really good, avenue for some people.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, it definitely is. I mean, when I'm not podcasting, I'm teaching online. So I'm kind of someone, Casey, who kind of grew up in a small community and never really understood, urbanization. And then, of course, I, went to university, got my degree, got out, and just needed to start working. And I just discovered that I'm supposed to be online. And
Yeah.
one thing led to the next. I love teaching, I
Hmm.
love talking all day. And then I figured out eventually, well, if I record what I say, then I can turn it into something. And now,
There you go.
and a lot of it is a lot of the secret is you just have to get into something and do it for a really, really long time and
Yeah.
keep trying
Yeah. Right.
until eventually you have people wanting to come on and talk to you, and until eventually it starts to build traction. But it's
Yeah.
for the blind people out there, I think it takes about 2 or 3 years
Oh yeah.
of
Yeah.
it easily, right?
Yeah.
Until
Absolutely.
because you have to figure it out. You have to discover that you're really supposed to do it or not supposed to do it.
Right.
So, what type of friendly help do you offer on webfriendlyhelp.com? By the way, I'm glad it's friendly because you could have called your company Web Unfriendly Help. There is a lot of
Right.
unfriendly help.
Right. Yeah. We all have experienced the unfriendly helps.
Yeah, why do you have to be so different, Casey? Why do you have to have friendly help? What type of company is that gets friendly help? I don't want that. Why do I want friendly help? I'm just used to the unfriendly.
Wow, that's the dark side. That's my other website. So
So,
yeah,
so for the next video, we'll do a video a deep dive into the other website of
yeah,
Casey
yeah,
Matthews,
right,
right?
right, the dark side. Yeah, well, we've all experienced, technical support that was just not helpful, for one reason or another, and a lot of times, just especially for me being in this business for so long, you know, you just find, that people are just grumpy a lot of times, when they call, and they're not really grumpy at, you per se, who's offering the technical support, but they're angry because,
Yeah.
their day has just been derailed because of some dumb, technical issue that they've got, and they can't, get what they want done. And so my kind of approach is to be friendly and realize, it's they're not mad at you, they're not mad at me, they're just mad at the situation. But if you can turn that around and fix it for them, make it better, maybe even give them a little bit of training to help them avoid that issue down the road, then they can get on with their day. It's a win-win situation. I can sleep good at night because I've helped somebody,
Hmm.
and they can get on with their day and not be stressed and have headaches and
Yeah.
whatever else. So that's kind of my approach. I always want to be friendly for people but helpful, and that's kind of where I got the name from. It's sort of a synthesis of a lot of things, but that's important for people.
I agree. I agree. For further information, everybody at home, you guys can click the link in the description. Of course, I'm going to help you get the word out about web friendly help. Absolutely. So, when people come to web friendly help, what are some specific problems that you're continuously seeing, constantly seeing, um, and how is this all engineered? So, does someone go create an account and then you work with them over video chat? Like what are the steps that you use to actually engineer the problem and actually
Right.
solve it? How does it work?
Yeah. So I like to keep things as simple as possible. I didn't want there to be any barriers. I didn't want to have to people worry about creating an account and to get to me and that kind of thing. So it's as simple as a phone call. And so most people can do that no matter what kind of technology they have, no matter what's going on with their technology. Anybody can make a phone call. So it starts with that or an email. And so I can take somebody's email, we can go back and forth, we can schedule a time, and then we do it through a phone call. Some people prefer to do it through Zoom or something else, and that's also fine. But at a minimum, a phone call is really all you need. And then a lot of my calls are computer related. So Windows probably take up 95% of the calls that I get. And what I generally will do for the blind, visually impaired, that's who I primarily serve. Although I do also work with sighted people as well if they want it. But I'll connect to their computer either through JAWS or through NVDA remotely. In this way, I can hear what's going on. I can hear exactly what's causing them trouble, and then I can also fix the issue remotely. So I don't have to walk them through it. If they're not really good with the keyboard, not really good with computer commands or whatever, I can walk them through it. I can fix it remotely, and they don't have to go through all those hoops to get something fixed. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Like I said, I try to keep things as simple and as easy as possible. I don't want to have any walls or barriers, for people to get the help that they need.
Good, good. So, what are some specific detailed problems that you've been seeing, on the Windows side and things like that? What is typically causing the problems? What do you think?
Well, sometimes it's a combination, and I have a background in information technology, so a lot of places they'll do access technology, which is the JAWS or NVDA or Zoom text or whatever it happens to be. But sometimes the IT part of it, the nuts and bolts of the operating system, why is this not working right? Sometimes that comes into play, and sometimes it's a JAWS issue and a Windows issue. That's just sometimes the settings aren't working right together, and so sometimes that needs to be addressed, and sometimes it's not just one or the other. So that's one of the things that comes into to play. I get a lot of calls for Outlook help, and my Outlook isn't reading right, or my Outlook is too chatty, or my emails aren't coming in. What's going on? A lot of people want to know, how to search the internet better. That's a big thing. A lot of people don't even use a lot of the tools available. The search engines, Google, Bing, all the major search engines. There's a ton of them out there now, and a lot of times it's just a question of getting some training on how to search better, how to find what you want better. Um, sometimes it's efficiency stuff, sometimes it's the computer, sometimes it's the user, sometimes it's both. Um, and so untangling a lot of that sometimes takes some time. But at the end of the day, generally I'm able to solve the issue and give them some training in the process. So that's what it's all about.
I really appreciate it. I really, really, I want you to know that I really appreciate this from the bottom of my heart because I'm someone who has, I mean, I know you don't, I mean, we don't know each other, but if you knew me, you would know that my story in life has been filled with dealing with grossly, at times through education or outreach to certain services, in my estimation and in my opinion, dealing with grossly incompetent individuals who sometimes uh, truly did not know and oftentimes did not want to be helpful. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is this is something that really, really, really affects blind people who are young in their teens,
Yeah.
20s, 30. My age. This
Right.
is really overlooked. So
Well,
we
and
really
if you get somebody that is in a professional setting
right,
and says, hey, this problem is because of your computer, and this happens a lot, you know, and it's a shame because it just sets up a whole uh, false narrative for that person, and the person experiencing that just assumes that's the answer. It's my computer. Here I go again. I've got another problem that can't be solved, and the tragedy with that is a lot of times it's not the computer. It's not that you just bought a computer that's just a lemon. That's just very rare this day and age. It's usually um, it's usually some sort of, setting somewhere, hardware issue or something, but it's usually not, oh, the computer is just broken,
right.
beyond measure, beyond repair. Um, and so that's tragic, when you have somebody that just blames something on, or somebody that blames something on assistive technology. Oh, it's Jaws. That how often have we heard that as blind people? It's Jaws that's causing your problem. Well, that's not always the case either, and sometimes it's a little bit of Jaws, and sometimes it's a lot of something else. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's tragedy because people that are not experienced, they go away thinking, oh, well, I'm just not good with technology. I just shouldn't be using technology. And it's technology can be such a game changer, and is such a game changer if it's used correctly, if you take the time to learn it. But if you have people that are in a position of authority for whatever reason, and either are misinformed themselves, or whatever, don't want to take the time to get to the meat of the problem and fix it, that's awful. And that's one of the things that I am endeavoring to fix, through my business. There's a lot of people that are, you know coming up with, they have a state affiliation, DVR or DBS or doors or whatever your state affiliation is, or even through a lot of the lighthouses. And a lot of the times, if you don't have an open case, then you don't get the assistance that you need. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to prevent. Nobody should be prevented from getting the assistance that they need just because they don't have an open state case or something like that. So again, I wanted it to be easy for people to get to me, get the help that they need, and as hassle free as possible.
You said a moment ago, you said that you also have helped sighted people. So, can sighted people benefit from webfriendlyhelp.com?
Well, it's a similar process. I will still connect to their computer, and I will typically, use the NVDA for that. It's a free screen reader, so nobody has to, pay anything. And I will generally mute their speech on their end because they don't need it and they don't want it typically. So, and then once I connect to their computer, I can go about fixing their issues. I can also give them training if they need it, if they want it. But I can, put the mouse on a particular location, say, here, this is what you need, this is what you want to click on. If you get this issue again, this is what you need to do, that kind of thing. A lot of times, as sighted people just, and most people in general just want the problem fixed, just want the problem to go away. So, a lot of times that's their immediate need. But after a couple of calls, sometimes it's like, okay, these problems keep coming up. How can I fix this? How can I stop this from happening? And so then that's when you can get into some training and that. So I do connect to I'll help people that are using magnification. I'll help people that are using nothing at all. It just depends on what the needs are.
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah, and there can be a lot of people who are sighted but they're low vision or they still
Hmm.
need help. Goodness. People need help with all sorts of little things. The problem that I'm typically seeing is that technology keeps keeps going at a faster rate than people are able to keep up with the going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this will always be, a problem, and as a teacher, I've always asked my students from all over the world this question. Many of my students are engineers or in IT like you, and I say, will we ever reach a time in society where we reach a point of technological equilibrium where we say something like, "Yep, iPhone 20. Yep, that's the number we're going to stop on. That's good." But really, I wonder that, because I'm only 30 years old. So how many other iPhones am I gonna have to buy in my life? When is this? But I mean it not to be artistic and not to be a comedian about it. I mean it to be serious.
Right.
Like, when are we going to be satiated? What have you found philosophically? What's your philosophy about approaching technology in that way? When do we say, okay, I'm full, I'm satiated? That's where we need to be. What do you think?
Well, I don't know that that's ever going to, we're ever going to get full, on that. And the reason is because there's always innovation to be done. And as long as there's innovation and as long as there's profit, you're always going to have, you know, more technology coming down the pike. I mean, I just remember, back when we first got the iPhone, I remember I got my iPhone 3GS, and that was just a huge innovation, and that was sort of like my Swiss Army knife at the time. I used it for all kinds of stuff, and then a couple of years later, I think it was the 4S that came out. And now we got Siri. Well, that was a whole nother level of innovation. Um, and so as long as you have things that are going to come out that are going to be a benefit, to people, I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where technology is going to be at a point where it's going to be like, okay, there's nothing else we can do for humanity. I just don't see it.
Right, right. Hold on one. Oops. Yeah. When you in interest action packed episode as always, when you live with your parents and family, I'm sure you heard it in the background. Yeah. They accidentally triggered it. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. At least I don't. At least. Oh, wait. Let me see something. At least I don't have an Alexa, because those really interrupt videos with
Oh yes,
content
they
creation.
can. Yeah, yeah, they can. But I go back to the Jaws. I mean that's an accessibility innovation. Um, but if you had somebody, going back to the Ted Hunter, and he started Hunter Joyce way back, and if he hadn't been, dissatisfied, he tragically, became blind, or maybe it's not such a tragedy when you consider the fact that he created Jaws and
Hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
gave us access, there. So a lot of these things come out of, um, and invention is what drives it. Necessity is the engine of invention. So it's if he hadn't had that accident, he would have no need for JAWS. He would have continued to use his computer, no problem, whatever. Um, so I think these innovations, they help everybody. They help humanity, but they can also do a huge, service for accessibility. And I think if technology is done correctly, is done right, is done for accessibility, then it can be a great equalization, for people with disabilities.
Really good.
I would have never been able to fill out my unemployment forms without a screen reader.
Right, right. And
So
and you know what? And that's very important. I mean, I'm frustrated. On one hand, philosophically, I'm sorry you had to do that, Casey, but on the other, these little things, these little governmental civil service issues, everybody is involved in civil service at some level. We
yeah,
all are when we buy something or pay taxes, right?
yeah,
That's all civil service in a philosophical sense. So at some point, some blind person is going to have to access some form, because the truth of the matter is that sighted people have to access a form
right,
once in their life. So you
yep,
can't just say, philosophically, well, this is hard because I'm blind. Well, quite frankly, this is life. These are things that
yeah,
all people have to do these things.
right.
Right? Definitely, definitely. So, who are some other what are some other interesting challenges and some interesting accomplishments that your company has had that you would like to highlight?
I think I would say that yeah, as a company, things continue to grow, and I continue to get more customers, and I'm definitely appreciate that, because it lets me help more and more people. So I think the fact that um, I was courageous enough, I guess, to start my own company. I'm helping a ton of people that I would have never seen if I had just stayed with the state organizations that I was working with. Not to badmouth them or anything, but
No, no.
there's a certain limitation. And now I'm, as a company, working with people all over the world. I've got some people all over the country, some in different countries, and it's just an opportunity that is, for me, it's kind of like a once in a lifetime thing.
Oh,
And
definitely.
I was able to do it through just my own perseverance, research,
Yeah.
the help of my wife, Judy, and just a lot of soul searching. A lot of help from the Almighty. There's a lot of things. It's not just me, but I was the one that kind of put everything together and said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. And it has really worked in my favor, and hopefully in the favor of a lot of the customers that I work with on a daily basis.
Yeah, good, good. Well, now you're definitely going to get international customers because Aaron's opinion is heard on all of the continents.
Great.
So yeah, I good. I hope you want business from other countries. Actually, it's interesting. On the YouTube channel here at Aaron's Opinion, more about 80 to 90% of the people are from outside of the United States.
Oh, wow.
So this is a very international experience. We're recording today. This episode will come out in January, and then from there you will hear, from there you'll get business from all over the world. So what other countries have you worked with overseas?
I've worked with some people in Europe, some people in India, and let me tell you, the time zone difference is horrendous.
I know, I
So,
know.
but it's like I said, it's a great opportunity. I have a couple people in Hawaii. I know that's not a different country, but sometimes it can feel like it. So it's interesting. It's just really interesting to see what people are dealing with. And sometimes it's interesting to see the differences in other countries, what people come up with. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. I enjoy it.
Sure.
So
Yeah. And see, so every country has their own, has their own way of dealing with this. I was speaking to someone just yesterday about this, that every country has their own perception and their own expectation for
mm,
people. So this can
yeah.
be a huge problem in a lot of ways. Yeah. But that's all really interesting. So you say it's your business, which means if it's your business, that means you have to make a little bit of money on the side. So
Right.
it's nothing personal, but
Right.
how do you actually take people's money out of this equation? How
Yeah.
does that
So,
work?
so what I do, and this is another thing that I really kind of thought over a lot before I even started this whole process. But there's a lot of companies that will charge by the hour. And some of these hourly rates can get pretty high, 75, 85, $100 an hour. And again, I wanted to be able to help people, and so I knew if I charge that much, I probably would get some, but not be able to help too much. So what I came up with is a membership. You think of a membership like a gym membership, or a music membership, something to that effect. And so um, since we all know that technology, you don't just solve your problem and then no more issues with technology ever again. That doesn't happen. So I came up with a subscription, and right now it starts at $30 a month, and I have different options available. But this way, people can be members, and I call it Tame Your Tech. Um, so people can be members of that, and then when they have an issue, they can email, they can call, they can text, whatever works for them, and then we come up with a schedule. I connect to their computer, and fix their issue. And it works really great because people don't have to think about how much is this going to cost just for, web friendly help to look at my computer. How much is this going to cost, to get my problem fixed? They don't have to worry because their members, they've already kind of been paying into the system. And some people, it's everybody's different, right? So some people will call me every couple of months when they have an issue. Some people will call me every couple of weeks. So everybody's different, but they're paying into the system. So whenever there is an issue, it's not, well, you've already been paying into the system. It's not a problem. We can take care of your issue. Instead of saying, okay, I need you know $225 upfront because this is probably going to take 3 hours to fix. You know, it doesn't have to come out all at once. You've already been paying into the system. So that's kind of what I've come up with to help people. There's a lot of people on fixed incomes. There's a lot of people on Social Security, SSDI, whatever the case may be in the U.S. Other countries don't have that system. You talked about I was just talking about India for a while back, and they don't have a social system. And I was talking to some people from there, and they don't have that. If you don't find a job, you don't eat. It's as simple as that. So, for people like that, mastering this technology and getting the technology to work for them without having to worry about the cost of a professional is huge. And again, it ultimately leads to, so for a person in India, it ultimately leads to them being able to work or not work. So there's huge consequences, but membership models is what I've come up with. It seems like it works best for the most people, for the most part. So that's kind of where that lies for the moment.
Yeah, really good, really good. And the other thing too is that can get very complicated when you deal with people in other countries. Is even like their perception of currency is different from country to
Yeah,
country, and their perception of a purchase is different from country to country. So,
right.
I work. Let's say that I work for company X, which I do. It's not called X, but I just call it that.
It's,
And I don't work in the staff. I don't work in the section that actually decides this, but I'm sure they have people who decide like how much we need to charge the students, and that
yeah,
gets very complicated very quickly because
right.
every country perceives buying differently. So, like, have you hired an accounting team? Are you just good at it? How do you like how have you come to figure out how to overcome that? Because that's a huge equation.
Well, yeah, and I don't necessarily know that I have a great answer for you on that.
Okay.
Normally, what will happen is somebody will come up and say, okay, this is going to cost, you know, X amount in my, denomination, and they will, figure out if that cost is worth it. And unfortunately, I haven't, at least currently, I haven't found a good way of getting around that. I know there's some people in, Africa, and there's some people, that would like to, um, have some services, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a difficult question because in their country things are a lot more expensive, but on this side, you know, if I were to say, okay, because you're in this country, let's just say, for example, we'll take your subscription down to $5 a month. Well, you know, I can't survive on that as a business, unfortunately. Um, so there is some issues there, and unfortunately, my company's been in business for 2 years, just under 2 years. So I'm not at the point where I can say, you know what, we'll we have donations coming in or whatever the case may be. We can do something like a sliding scale. I'm not a nonprofit. I didn't decide to go that way. So my corporation just operates a little bit differently. Um, but it's a tough question, no doubt about it. I wish I had a better answer for you on that, but right now that's where it stands.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Excellent. I mean, I guess I wonder if there was some way to, I guess, get enough customers around the world enough times where, in other words, I'm certainly not justifying it, but let's say, because I have someone on Aaron's opinion, and the person's from Gambia, right?
Hmm.
Let's say, and they are, and let's say that in Gambia, let's say that the Gambian money, it's very expensive to access webfriendlyhelp.com, but this particular person, whoever they are out there, they own a radio station in Gambia, right? So
Hmm.
it's like, I wonder if there's a way to get enough people subscribed where, in other
Yeah.
words, you could say, okay, well, I'll just ask for less money because of the currency
Right.
exchange, and where that would still be uh, ethical from a business perspective.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I know, I know you don't know. I'm just like curious about, like, I
Right.
wonder
Well,
how many
and
people.
that is kind of a goal that I have, because part of the subscription, this is what I tell people all the time. Instead of me charging, let's just say $75 an hour, for services. The more people that subscribe, the more I'm able to keep prices affordable. So, that's the goal. The more people that get subscribed, the more I can continue to, offer this and not have to raise prices. I mean, I do have to raise prices from time to time because, you know, processes for billing go up, and transaction fees go up, and all the little nitty gritty business details that probably nobody's interested in. But my goal is to, yeah, absolutely have enough subscribers that I could, take that on and say, you know what, we're going to make an exception in your case. Don't worry about it. Or um, have enough subscribers that I can hire other staff to provide, more support, maybe different languages. Who knows? That's the goal. I'm nowhere near there yet, but I'm definitely open to something like that down the
Cool.
road.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you have anyone who speaks French? Because I'm a French speaker. I no, seriously. I'm not sure if you knew that or if you had heard that around the
I did
community.
not know.
But yeah. So I was just wondering if you've ever worked from someone from France or a French speaking country.
No, not yet. No, no, nothing from France, as of this point. But who knows? That may be in the future.
Yeah. Who knows who sees this video too from all of the overseas people that watch. So who knows?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, all really interesting. And then are there different like payment platforms available for people? Are you accepting anything on the block? Oh, what's your opinion about blockchain? By the way, have you ever used it?
I have not used it. I've
Me
I've
neither.
kind of read on it. I think it's an interesting platform as far as decentralization of currency, and I kind of like the idea. It does seem to be a bit complicated to get started, so I don't think it's for everybody. At least not at this point, until you can sign up just for the simple form and that kind of thing. But I think it is. It's got a lot of implications for privacy and keeping records out of the public eye, and that kind of thing. I do like a lot of things with it, but
To some
yeah.
to some extent, Casey, but to some extent, when I'm successful at work and my podcast, to some extent, I want there to be a public record. To some extent, I
Hmm.
don't necessarily. I mean, it's another interesting philosophical discussion. I don't necessarily want to get to a point where everything is hidden because that's
Yeah,
also a problem too.
yeah,
Sometimes you
yeah.
need to be able to show stuff.
Right, you've got a point. You do have a point. I think when I look at it, it's kind of one of those things where, if people are able to, from a privacy standpoint, see, let's just say, where my company spends money. Maybe I do want that, maybe I don't want that.
Right.
But the option should be, with me. I shouldn't be able to have somebody, crack, somebody who knows somebody, let's say, get into the bank and find out, oh, Casey's, spending money on this, and with blockchain, because it is, more decentralized, it's a lot more difficult, probably not impossible, but it's a lot more difficult for that kind of thing to happen. But if I have access to my own records, I could copy that and put it somewhere if I wanted to, or show some proof of spending or something. It should be in my hands, and that's one of the neat things that I think I kind of like about the blockchain. It gives more of that into my hands instead of potentially opening the box to somebody else. If they know the right person who can get into that account, that should not be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just very interesting because I
Yeah.
wonder if I'm sure my generation will get to the point where we're just all paying on the chain thing. It's just one big thing that we're going around. I guess passing the little crypto coins back and forth until until I guess eventually we'll get bored of that and come up with money or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. But well, Casey, I really tremendously appreciate everything you're doing, and I celebrate successful people on Aaron's Opinion. I notice I don't really know how it works. It must be the magic of the karma, the great karma that comes from content creation and helping others. But each guest just gets better and better, and I'm more and more appreciative as I always am, and I really appreciate blind people who are willing to talk to me and are doing the right thing for other blind people and society. So this is really good. You're going to be a huge asset, and there's plenty of people here at Aaron's Opinion from all over the world who definitely have technical questions about all sorts of stuff. So
Yeah.
I think you're in business.
Well, I just want to mention real quick, my
Sure.
my blog is free for everybody who wants, just free information, and I try to blog about things that are meaningful from my customers. So even though you may not be a paying member, you can look at that blog and get tips on all kinds of stuff. I just put out a huge list of, well, not a huge list, but it's a nice list of accessibility resources that people can need for free. And so anybody can kind of take advantage of that. I put out deals, computer deals mostly, for people that are looking for a computer cheaply. So those are available for free, and I also have a language translation option on the bottom of my page. So for those people that do speak German or French or Swahili or whatever it is, you can go down there, and there's a little drop down box where you can choose your language, and the entire site will be translated, to your language. So I try to cater as much as I can, with somewhat limited resources. So I hope that helps some people out there.
That's really excellent. You said that you had maybe heard of Aaron's Opinion before. So before this conversation, what have you heard about Aaron's Opinion, and have you seen any of my listened to any of my content?
I think I've heard it by name, but I haven't actually, heard anything or listened to anything. I'm on Twitter quite a bit, so sometimes I hear tidbits here and there, but I haven't taken the time to, look it up or listen to anything,
That is
unfortunately.
fine. Totally fine. But I'm sure you still have a lot of questions for me in the remaining time. What I always love to let the guests ask, their questions. So what questions do you have for me? What do you want to know about me?
I think the most question that I have is, you talk about a lot of issues that affect the blindness community, and I totally appreciate that. I'd like to know, what is the number one issue that you see time and time again on your podcast that really needs to be addressed by society?
The issue that needs to be addressed by society is that blind people need to start functioning and working and gaining the confidence that they need to get into the workforce or get into whatever industry they generally want to work in. But I'm seeing a tremendous lack in self-esteem and a
Mm,
tremendous lack of confidence. If you put one foot forward, you don't need nobody needs to start out podcasting with a Blue Yeti, right?
right.
I've been podcasting for years without one, and I only got one because quite frankly, because I'm noticing that I'm getting more opportunity to do voice acting in other projects where it really is appropriate. But
Hmm.
99% of you out there, you guys don't need a Blue Yeti.
Right.
So
Yeah.
really, you know, if you only take it one day at a time, baby steps. If you take baby steps, eventually you'll get there, and it will be rewarding. But just one step at a time.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think I really think that the blindness community and blind people have been really pushed back by the pandemic. I think that has really
Mm,
affected the psyche of the disability community, and that I tell students, I say, well, I tell anyone, I say, I think that the pandemic has affected our economy for 5 years, but I think it's
yeah.
affected the disability community for 10. I think this is a 10
Yeah.
year setback.
Yeah.
So, and I'm 30 years old. So for
Mm,
me, this is like the first thing in my life as an adult that I've had to go through.
yeah.
So
Right.
that's the problem that we need to start addressing. And the way to address it is many things. People who want a podcast, who want to speak up, who want to get their voice out there need to. Other people need to listen to content that's already there, that's there to help them. And
Yeah.
so that's really, really what needs to happen. What are
Well,
your
I think.
go
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, part of the kind of silver lining to that whole, pandemic, setback is companies are more amenable to people working remotely. And that does
Oh
open
yeah.
up a lot of possibilities. But again, you need to take the time to learn the technology.
Right, right. Well, it opens up the possibilities, but then it also opens up the discrimination, right? So
Yeah.
it goes. It's a. I
Can't
don't
go
know if
both
we.
ways.
I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't disagree with you that there's silver linings to things, but some of my students say, well, the good thing about the pandemic, I say, well, no, there's no good thing about any pandemic. So
Hmm.
there's no good, but the thing that's less bad maybe is that people have more opportunities to work from home. But here's the problem with all of that is that if you are someone who's a blind person who's not good at working from home, you aren't going to be good at
Hmm.
work from home at home just
Yeah.
because there was a pandemic.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think it's actually I have to respectfully disagree a tiny bit. I don't think that's a silver lining. Actually, I think that's part of the problem. I don't know. I mean, my glass is always half empty. Maybe you see it half full, but I think
Yeah.
that's more of a problem than a silver lining. I don't know.
Right. Well, I can tell you from my experience now. Back in 2008, I graduated college, and I did college both ways. I did college on a physical campus. Did not work for me, um, and I also did college remotely, and eventually got my degree that way. And for me, I think one of the advantages is as I went through classes, nobody knew that I had a disability. And so to me, that was kind of impactful. I could be among my classmates and nobody knew I was any different than anybody else. And maybe they find out and maybe they don't, but um, sometimes they did, and it was like, oh wow, your papers look just like mine, and whatever. So I think there's can be some advantages. But it can be a setback if somebody's not good at working from home, or somebody's not good at working with people. My wife is kind of the opposite of me. She thrives on a physical college campus. That's the way she worked. She worked better with that. She had to have people. She had to have you know she was a social butterfly, so she really enjoyed doing that. Me, it didn't work for me. So I think there's people that are better at certain situations and in certain environments. And again, it kind of comes down to knowing where your strengths are, what you're good at, and kind of taking it one step at a time. But
Right,
yeah.
and to figure out over a period of time, the other thing that you have to figure out is what do you want to do. But the problem is, it takes a couple years to figure that out. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
problem.
It can. Yeah.
It does. It does. I don't think, for the most part, most people don't get their dream job first. I mean,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you, what is the most unusual hobby you do that I would never expect you to do?
Oh, probably one of my hobbies is weather. I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoy weather, studying weather, researching weather. What drives, why does a storm form? That kind of thing. Why does this happen? So I really enjoy that. It's one of my hobbies, and uh, you know, it's not uncommon for me to just listen to the Weather Channel or whatever. So, you know,
Hey,
that's
whatever
that's
you know,
that's
what
me,
whatever whatever floats your boat. If that
right?
you know what, Casey, if you know what, if listening to the Weather Channel makes you happy, fine. But just
Right.
listen to the.
Yeah, there are worse things, right?
No, but you know what though? It's quite a complex science. I forget what podcast and I forget the person. There was a podcast. I forget what it was. It was really fascinating too. It wasn't me who did it, but there was another podcaster who interviewed this young blind teenager who also had a weather, also had a passion for weather and actually wants to
Yes,
be a
yes, I
media.
did. I did actually listen to that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
and things like that. So weather weather is really cool. Well, Casey, how can someone get in touch with you if they want web friendly help?
So my email address is help@webfriendlyhelp.com. The website is the same, webfriendlyhelp.com. And my phone number is 567-234-0078. And of course, like I said, I have a blog. Anybody can sign up for that, whether you're a paying member or not.
Casey, it was an honor and pleasure to have you here. You did a great job. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.